No, we can
You
make all the
sure we're not
mistakes we
live?
want. There's not unlike YouTube. Everybody's there
Hello.
just why are you talking shit about Tavis, man?
Hello, everyone. This is Ryan Naraine, and this is episode 67 of the Three Buddy Problem. Hanging out with my buddies, Costin and Raiu out in Bucharest, Romania. What's up, buddy?
Hey, round number. 67 is the first prime number after 64, which is round number.
Who's going to say 6-7? 6-7. Do you guys know
Six,
not know
seven?
this meme? Or
No.
meme or
No.
whatever it is? Oh,
No.
okay.
We're
You
What
got
is it?
homework to
We're-
look up 6-7.
we're not
Ask
hip,
your,
we're cool.
ask your
Yeah.
high school kids what
Okay.
6-7 is. This is so stupid. Anyway,
Yeah.
welcome aboard to the podcast. We have a lot of things to get to. I want to start with my buddy Juanito, who is just back from Offensive AI Con, which is Dreadnode's first shot at an invite-only Offensive AI Con. What was the tone there? What was the big takeaway?
Honestly, they did a phenomenal job. So like the Dreadnought folks are friends. They're friends from LabsCon. They've sponsored us the past 3 years, and we're very cool about sort of putting this thing together. Kind of taking on the same model as LabsCon, sort of like the days, the invite onlyness and whatnot, but very much making it their own.
Shark
Which was
Talks?
very. So actually, the talks were longer. The vibe was much more like beach bummy, which I think is more like kind of like Dreadnought, right? You're
The
in the
whole
San Diego
yeah.
beach suburb. People were surfing. Like instead of hiking, people were going off to surf after, which was it was pretty cool. Much more relaxed, and like the parties were not as like hardcore, which actually meant folks were having a lot more conversation. Look, I think it worked really well. I really enjoyed it, and the invite list was much more appropriate for the topic, right? A lot of the AI lab folks, the people who are working on like AI red teaming and some of this tool development. So it was great. I'm actually really looking forward to the next one. I mean, this was pretty flawlessly executed on their part. So, a lot to look forward to there.
The flashy promo was a panel with Dave Itel, Perry Adams, former DARPA AICC, and Rob Joyce from the NSA. What on earth did they talk about? Was this on the record, off the record? Like, what was that panel about? It was the flashy kind of promo thing. I saw a couple
Yeah.
pictures on the internet, and now I want to know what they talked about.
I think so. If I remember correctly, all of this was with Chatham House, and so I'm not going to go too into all of it. Yeah,
I hate this shit.
more than anything, I thought it was hilarious because you had Rob Joyce sort of like giving like very measured responses, and then Perry making fun of Dave Itel the entire time. And sort of them riffing on each other. So it was a good conversation. Look, what I'll say about the overall discussion is it was really interesting to hear AI being discussed more as what I consider sort of applied AI, and a lot more discussions about like, look, this works, this doesn't work. We tried this was great, this does not work at all.
All focused on the offensive front, entirely on the offensive front.
Almost entirely. What I'll say is it wasn't offensive in the way that like if you go to offensive con, we're just talking like vulns and exploitation. It was more like there's a lot of automating tooling for red teaming, automating tooling for quote unquote offensive operations, but the subtext is largely defensive, right? Like you're basically saying, hey, we really want to automate vulnerability discovery. We really want to automate, reaching feature parity with Bloodhound, reaching feature, like how do we test things so that we're basically able to conduct red teaming ops in an autonomous fashion where you actually have a good sense of whether you're accomplishing anything, right? Like think about it right now. You're running this shit by the numbers. How do you say, oh yeah, the AI agent used these tools and it actually got through to this domain controller and it found these credentials and it did this, that, and the other, right? Like you have to find, like the thing with AI is part of this is it becomes a matter of like, how do you effectively verify that the thing did what you said it did so that you can then do 100 runs, 1,000 runs, and go, this model does better in this way and not the other. So it's almost like formalizing a lot of the ops in ways that I think are were really interesting to listen to. And then you get into the sweet spot, and this is where I think Dreadnought did an amazing job in like their talk. What was it? Shane and Nick Landers did this talk on the second day. It was like super understated, but they basically showed not their platform. I think they're way too shy about showing off their platform. Like they don't want to like be salesmen, but like they didn't show their platform. They showed the results. And at one point they quietly were just like, oh yeah, by doing it this way, by tuning it in this way, we got, I think it was like an 8 billion, like an 8B parameter model, which is fairly small, to outperform O1 Pro in these operations. And then you go,
specific things.
excuse me, right? Like in just the management of the entire sort of like chain. So essentially, what, for those that don't know what like Dreadnought sells, and I swear I'm not a salesman for them. I'm just
Yeah,
a
you
fan.
sound like a pitchman here now.
Well, dude, I'm excited about their shit. I honestly think they need to push it a little harder, because what they're doing in my mind is a hedge against the inherent position that the frontier labs are in to scam all of us. And I think Anthropic has recently showed how willing they are to do something like that, right? When Anthropic quietly degrades the model that you're using, doesn't tell you, and then still charges you the same amount or still puts you on the same quote unquote plan, as consumers, we're effectively just fucked, right? Like, what way are you supposed to say, this
You're
would be the
singling out
equivalent of like,
Anthropic, but this is across the board, right? I mean, how do I know that when I punch something into ChatGPT, it's the thinking model versus the honor model? I mean, in the background,
Well,
they're doing whatever they want to do, right?
look, it may be across the board, but I'm singling out Anthropic because it became apparent with Anthropic, and I personally experienced it with Anthropic. So I'm going to give Anthropic as much shit as I can.
But at a
in this
general sense,
process.
this is how this stuff is built, though. It's built that they have all the control to kind of shift you around from model to model based on
And
power
this
patterns
is where
and
you
usage.
get this is where you get something really cool with what Dreadnought has put together, which is their whole thing is to create essentially recipes for testing. And the idea being, I love the way they framed it. They were like, look, models age fast, and models are going to keep coming out. And the idea is essentially, how do you know that you're consistently getting the results from a model that you need to be getting in order to get reliable results from what is a non-deterministic system? Like, as it is, if you're developing any kind of tooling and it has to be reliable, you need some kind of testing harness and evaluations and so on to be able to say, hey, this thing will give us more or less the right answer in 94% of cases. Great. Now, I ask you, if you, like, Gabe recently described me as a maximalist. If you're like me, you go and you choose the heaviest model, the most expensive model, and you go, great, it did the thing. That's not a business, right? Like, you can't automate that. You can't use that 100 million times if it's the most expensive version of token generation that does what you need it to do. So then the question really becomes kind of like this exploration of, okay, let's say we figure out that LLMs can do this kind of reversing, and you go, okay, we did it with GPT-5 Pro plus Asian. It costs $2 a run. You, okay, well, that's not gonna work very well for us, is it? And then you take that same recipe in that platform and you go, okay, well, let's try every open source model. Let's try every open source model with this temperature versus that temperature. Let's try every open source model with this verifier versus the other one. Let's try every non-open source model, blah, blah, blah. And then you can actually get this sense of performance where you go, actually, weirdly enough, Kimi K2, which is available this easily and like this cheaply, with these settings, gives us the same performance as we were getting with GPT-5 Pro at like 0.02 cents a run. That's when you start to get into the actual business side of this, which goes like, how do we manage our fucking cogs? What does efficiency actually look like? How do you get reliable, effective output without spending whatever money,
Well, you
Sam
go pay
Altman
somebody else
decides
to
is
tell
worth
you,
it?
though, right? Like, you have to
Well,
find budget to go pay Dreadnought to tell you that.
Well, you have to find budget to pay Dreadnought to give you the means to answer the question for
That's what I'm
yourself as
saying.
many fucking times as you want from that point forward, right? But like
Oi.
think about what we're discussing here. Like this is not a consumer platform for the sake of
No,
like,
I get it.
random so and so. This is a matter of like if you're building anything that is supposed to rely on models, to me, it's like either you figure out a way to build this for yourself or you buy it from them because the question becomes how the fuck, like this would be the equivalent of us having like a trucking company and every time you pull up to a gas station you don't know what concentration of like gas you're gonna get and
Right.
you go, oh,
But
let's see, right? Like,
right, but you become an added cost though, right? Because you still have to go pay a guy to tell me, hey, come help me use this gas station. What does unleaded mean? What does unleaded not mean? Am I really getting 1.36 gallons? Like that's what you're
yeah,
promising, right? I have to go pay a
no.
guy to do that. It just feels like
Well, it's less than the 1,000 people you fired because you automated,
yeah, I
whatever
get
the
it.
fuck part of this thing, right? Like the other part of this is I actually think that if you have a business built on these things, that it's an unavoidable cost because how do you know that you're getting the same value and the same output today versus
Right.
tomorrow versus when? If I tell my customers that every time they jump on, a Sentinel-1 console, they're going to get reliable output from an LLM assisted tool that tells them what to hunt on. And I'm just fucking, let's say like I'm just tying a ribbon over,
Right.
ChatGPT, OpenAI, and on today it worked amazing, and on Wednesday they're like, well, we need more GPUs to generate videos of Sam Altman stealing GPUs, so the protein folding and cancer research can go fuck itself. We're lowering that capability. You have no way to know that unless
Right.
you
So you're
have some kind of harnessing around this.
right. And there's an independent verification point that kind of keeps the
Yeah.
frontier labs honest about, what.
Yeah, but look, let's not bury the lead here. I'm not talking about like just like how do I make things cheaper. I think it's really fascinating to understand that for certain problems, tuning a way cheaper open source model the right way will outperform the really expensive, slow reasoning model that you can get from a frontier provider. Like, that's the real takeaway here. The other parts are just, nice to have.
Costin, jump in. Are you following this?
No, no, I am, but from a much more practical point of view. Like, I can, of course, speak in theory about the advantages of all that, but I was thinking that actually this can actually save you money in the following sense. Just to give you an example, let's say you use Geppetto to do reverse engineering, which I do a lot lately. And I noticed that, let's say I use a local model running on one of my computers on a MacBook, and I use ChatGPT through the API, maybe 4.0 or like one of the 4 models for speed. If I run it locally, it can be like 50 seconds per function. If I use ChatGPT, which costs some money, it can be like 25 seconds. And for me to save 20 seconds is way more valuable than a few cents that we spend on using the frontier model, like you say. So from this point of view, knowing that whatever model, which actually finishes in 15 seconds on my laptop, has the same quality output as the frontier model would be fantastic. I mean, because in the end, it's not the money, but it's the time. So if this actually saves you time by providing results faster, I think that is the most valuable side of things.
Yeah.
Are you using both? Are you using both frontier labs and local models in your workflow, in your daily workflow, Costin, or are you just outsourcing all of it externally?
I am using both. I mean, I have very good results with the OSS models from OpenAI, like the 20B model, which runs on the MacBook. It's formidable.
It's crazy
my opinion,
fast.
it's superior, and the results are superior to pretty much everything else. So I tested. I use like different things, but after OpenAI released this set of models, I'm just using that. I'm not using anything else nowadays when I have to run things locally. And yeah, cloud, of course. Yeah, the frontier models are a bit superior, a bit faster, a bit more polished, more capabilities, maybe larger context windows. It's actually funny. I was analyzing Juan's talk from LabsCon. First of all, I transcribed that using Whisper, running locally on the
So you
Mac,
have the
and
text transcript. Share it
I,
if you have to.
I can share it. Yeah, I did it locally so that I don't upload that 1.2 gigs file anywhere. So I did it locally on the MacBook. It worked brilliantly, and then it was funny that the 20B model from OpenAI, it was unable to crunch the ideas from that talk. It was like too much. It was like, oh, the context, the token window is too little. Please increase token window, please, masters.
My
I increased-
apologies to the
I
open
increased
source
it.
model. Yeah.
It was crashing. It was unbelievable. It was crashing LM
That's funny.
Studio, running the 20B model from OpenAI.
I want to talk a
That's
little
really
bit about like what the frontier labs are doing. ChatGPT, OpenAI put out a ChatGPT October report that talked about what kind of threat activity they're seeing from different parts of the world, which is kind of like this niche factor that I've always talk about. But before we get that's later down in the news, I want to jump in quickly. Costin, before we go on, before we start the show, Bucharest Cybersecurity Conference was this week, and you were out there as well. What is that? What is that scene like?
So that's the first question. What is Bucharest
Yeah, yeah,
Cybersecurity Conference? It sounds like it's
All
actually
of Bucharest there.
possibly the largest cybersecurity conference in Bucharest. Maybe, I don't know, perhaps DEF Camp is bigger, but DEF Camp is maybe a convention. I don't know.
How many people out at this cybersecurity conference?
I think we're like maybe somewhere between 400 to 500, somewhere in that range. Although it says a cybersecurity conference, my feeling was more of a policy conference. Like everyone was wearing suits. Like the first thing you go there and see everyone's wearing suits. I was like with the jacket, and typically cybersecurity conferences is not full of people wearing suits. That's
is it a for-profit corporate thing?
It's actually organized by the DNSC, which is a Romanian cybersecurity directorate.
I see.
So
like
our CISA organizes this event. They also did it last year. Last year, in my opinion, was a bit bigger. I think this year were a bit more restrictive in whom they approve. So I had actually friends who applied to attend, which was free, but they got rejected because essentially all the seats were full.
I see.
It, like I said, maybe wasn't necessarily security focused, but more like policy. But there were like some amazing people there, so it was a good chance to catch up with our friend Mark Graham. If you remember Magpie from back in the days, he was with Mystic.
What is Magpie doing over there?
He's with Dragos. He's with Dragos nowadays, and he was in one of the panels about industrial security and threats. So it was good to catch up with him, as well as a lot of people whom I know since high school, and it was funny, like they're all now like CISO of that and like a COO at that company. So everyone is more or less connected to security from, let's say, my close friends from back in the days. So more like an opportunity to see old friends, see like a few talks about policy, and catch up with friends.
Was there a lot of energy there
like over there?
I was going to ask the same question.
Yeah,
was there a lot of talk around like drone stuff? Like what is the policy discussion dominated by?
I'm afraid it's nothing that serious.
Nothing sexy? Misinformation, maybe?
No, I can tell you. It's more along the lines of things such as a NIS2 directive. So there's like this, I don't know, maybe not everyone is familiar with NIS2, but in Europe, suddenly this is a big thing. So NIS2 is this directive which from a practical point of view, it means that if you are a company in one of these critical sectors like energy, oil, or you're actually a company that provides services to them, then you need to register with the NSC. Why? In case there's some kind of a disruption of cyber attack, suddenly like a small player has the potential to disrupt the national energy grid or something like that. So imagine that the national energy grid, they use some antivirus product, a random one. And then that vendor gets hacked and somebody deploys a destructive malware through that product to the national grid. So the NIS2 directive essentially kind of tries to regulate these issues. So there were like a lot of roundtables and discussions about this one, while others were about education. Like a big problem is that nobody's teaching kids how to survive in today's digital world. And there's like all sorts of things, from grooming, spear phishing attacks. There's like people logging on in online games and grooming kids and things like that. And there's basically no curriculum in schools. They don't teach that. Typically, it's the other way around. The kids teach the teachers because they're like more savvy with computers and passwords and passkeys and security and antivirus
and bypassing parental control.
Did I tell the story with Wikipedia? I don't think I did. Like Wikipedia is blocked at my daughter's school.
For cheating.
I have no idea why they would block
silly.
Wikipedia. That's silly, right? ChatGPT is blocked, Wikipedia, and one day,
fuck encyclopedias, man.
She connects to the internet, and one of my scripts detects a shady connection, and I'm like, implant in my home network, and I'm tracking very quickly where does it come from, where is it, like, oh, it's her laptop. And like, okay, I look in her laptop, and what do you know, there's a VPN, like a new VPN. And I'm like, what's that? And she says, oh, we have there's an Indian kid in our class, he's a genius with computers, and he showed me how to bypass the school filtration so I can access Wikipedia. So her Indian computer savvy colleague installed one of these shady VPN applications, which immediately triggered one of my rules. And I was like, okay, let's replace that with a more reputable VPN.
Sweetheart, it's time to get you your own Mulvad subscription.
It's time for
you're old enough.
Yeah, like, 14 years old, it's time for your Mulvad VPN subscription.
Coming of age story. Yeah.
While you were at Offensive AI Con and Costin with this Bucharest cybersecurity conference, Apple security chief Ivan Kirstich went to Hexacon for his first keynote in years, I believe, since his last talk at Black Hat. In fact, I'll just mention here, I invited him to the podcast. I had a conversation. I had invited him to the podcast, and he says, I kind of removed myself from the media glare after that last Black Hat talk, and I kind of I got enticed to come out at Hexacon, and this is going to be the last one. At least that's what he told me. That's his excuse for not coming on the show, which was a bit of a bummer. But at Hexacon, Ivan actually announced some pretty significant news around Apple's bug bounty program, and the big one is a $2 million payout for exploit chains comparable to these mercenary spyware attacks. Some of the zero-click, one-click things. $2 million, not for vulnerabilities, but for full exploit chains.
Right.
Does this move the needle? Does this move the needle and keep it out of the hands of someone wanting to sell it to a Paragon, an NSO? Like, that's the battle, right? The battle here now is like, how are we pricing this thing to entice folks to give it to Apple instead?
I mean, how comparable is that to the current pricing, right? Like, to me, in my outdated ignorance, it sounds like the numbers we were hearing about the black market sort of paying for an exploit chain, and they too would be paying for an exploit chain, right? Like NSO, I'm sure, doesn't mind collecting pieces of vulnerabilities, but they need chains. So it sounds like we're in the ballpark, I guess. And
but does this move the price? That's my fear here, is that Apple gets into the ballpark and then the ballpark moves.
Well, but that's good, right? Like, think about it, right? Like, at the end of the day, if the whole point of this is that you're just trying to increase the cost and the scarcity of these things, then if Apple pays 2 and that means NSO has to pay 5, then and then Apple pays 3 and then NSO needs to pay 8, right? Like that's the whole point, right? Like that's the whole point of this whole situation. You're not going to stop the vulns from coming around. The weird machines are going to be weird, but but talking about, like, think about it from the perspective of a Paragon that has to like keep operations going, right? You're effectively saying, okay, this thing that our entire business relies on to function day to day for our most basic operations, right? Those exploits are not for the every once in a while thing, right? Like that is a part of their day to day product offering. Especially with no persistence in it, right? Like the whole point being, we're not setting any persistence so that we don't get caught. Anytime somebody restarts the phone, you need to reinfect it, which means you need this exploit chain to somehow to still be valid. Now, you're telling me that exploit chain costs at least $2 million. Every time we use it, you've got this, like you got to kind of gird your loins and go, "Ooh, okay, yeah, we're there, we're good. You didn't get caught." And then
they're still in business, though. They're still in business, probably profitable business. So let's not pretend that it's affecting them in any significant. Well, it's affecting them, but
it is. So I think where you would see it affecting them is not whether they're in business or not, or whether they're getting contracts or not. But if you see situations like if you remember after the hacking team leak, if we would go through the hacking team emails, you would see moments when they would be like, we're putting a stop to all operations. We need to go fix this shit. Like, basically like a no service period. Because what you're saying is right now, like we're unsafe. We don't know that we can essentially do this without getting caught or without somehow making the situation worse. We need to go replace a component, or we need to go, rejigger the platform, or rejigger our persistence mechanism, whatever, so that we don't get caught. With this exploit situation, it's much more interesting because you're not talking about rejiggering the malware, the implants themselves, because there's, as far as we know, no like meaningful detection capability on iOS itself. But you are saying that you can't actually guarantee that any of this stuff will get on box unless we find another exploit chain. And in that, like, I don't like Apple's approach, but I respect it for its consistency and for its pragmatic approach, in that it actually has some kind of a strategy. The idea being like, we're neglecting the implant side of it. And I'm sure Apple people will say, no, we're not. We're doing X, Y, and Z. I'm like, no, you're fucking neglecting the implant side of it. I don't give a shit what you say. But you are boxing people into saying, like, in order to get on here, you've got like only a couple of mechanisms. And the one that most of you are relying on is based on these exploit chains. We're going to make this shit as expensive as possible, and then we're going to burn them as often as we can. It is a viable mechanism.
Look, I think.
Sorry,
at the
Juan.
moment,
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought there was a lag, and I thought you were saying go.
No, I wanted to say that if you ask me, it makes no sense to sell to Apple. Like at the moment, I know it sounds brutal, but it makes zero sense if you're driven by a financial point of view. It makes no sense to sell to Apple.
And there's a subset of folks that's just their primary motivation. I'll get as much money as I can for these findings. Right.
So I think the only way we can make this work, and I know it will make some people upset and it'll make me not okay in their books, but I think that we need to extend the sanctions against the companies like NSO and whoever to the people selling them 0 days. Only then it will become logical to sell to Apple, so you avoid the risk of getting sanctioned for fueling and supporting these abuses and these abusive businesses. Otherwise, in the current state of things, it makes no sense to sell to Apple for less money, because again, there's a bunch of companies buying 0 days. If you remember, $10 million. Some companies out of United Arab Emirates, some Russian companies were hyping $20 million for the full zero-click chain with persistence. And that's still like, I don't know, 10 times more money than what Apple offers. So unless we find a way to make it risky and dangerous to sell
Right.
to NSO and the likes,
The
it makes no
problem with
sense to
that,
sell
But
to
that's where
Apple.
you end up in like Intellexa territory, right? Like you sell to those people and it doesn't go super well. You can't even pretend to just be selling to like a reputable country along the way. But like I think I take your point, Costin, about it having to be kind of more risque. Um, I think honestly, I would put it a little differently. I That's like a profit maximization function. What I would say is if if Apple chooses to be reliable as a buyer, they will have a much greater impact than if they just try to be the highest bidder. Which is to say, in the past, we've seen instances where people were like, yeah, I reported the thing, and then they like jerked me around for 6 months and then decided they weren't going to pay me and they patched it. And like,
those are
when
the
that
only
shit
stories I hear, though. I've
Yeah.
never heard of someone saying they've gotten 500,000 from Apple for a bug or an exploit bounty. I noticed in the Wired piece that accompanied this announcement from Ivan, he was quoted as saying, "Oh, we've done a few $500,000 payments in the past." I've never seen anyone document it publicly.
I mean,
the
I'm
only
sure that's also
documentation I
with an
get is
NDA, right?
the only documentation I see publicly is when they dick around folks. So
Right.
I feel like there's a misbalance there. Before you finish up your point, Juanito, I wanted to, under Costin's proposal to sanction even sellers, doesn't that just reshape the market entirely? Prices come dropping down, and then again, you're just, I don't understand how that fixes the.
You need to be careful. You need to be careful. So look, the in my view, I think we tend to focus too much on the money. It makes it sound like it's like this, casino
money is the
payout
headline,
type
though.
situation.
The money is the headline.
But that's my point. I think that's the fact that it's the headline is focusing way too much on the money when what you are ignoring is the fact that like these people are working their asses off. These exploits are not easy. Like I have immense respect for people who can come up with like an iOS exploit chain. And what I hear from people who know how this shit actually works is that now it's the kind of work that takes teams. It's not just a single savant out there who's just like just popping out an iOS exploit chain. And one of the smartest people I know, like I know it almost killed her to like develop one of these things on her own over months and months and months. And like when you look at that situation, the reliability of being able to monetize your effort, I think, is a much more important factor than how much you make for it. And that's something that Apple could
Lean in into, right?
If they're smart and they lower their guard and they go, yeah, maybe we already had this exploit chain or like the relevant vulns in the back, but we should just pay these guys their fucking money for the sake of the program for this, and not hide it under an NDA, but instead say, hey, congratulations to these three fucking geniuses. We just like paid them out $2 million for, whatever. And we've patched stuff in the next, we will be patching stuff, or we patched stuff 6 months ago, whatever the fuck you want to do. But the point is, it's a dark market. It's a gray market, which includes a certain amount of unreliability and a lot of like game theoretical concerns about whether like, are we investing too much time into a thing that won't pay off? Are we going to tell somebody about the thing and then they won't pay us? Are we going to get screwed over by the broker who's in the middle of it?
That's the reality of that business, right?
Exactly.
That world,
And Apple can change the reality of that business if they just become known as the, look, if you showed up with a chain, you're going to make some fucking money, period. Maybe it's not 10 mil, maybe it's 2, maybe it's not 2, but it's 1.5. Maybe if it's a duplicate, we'll dock like 400,000, but you still get 1.6 million. All of a sudden, you are working towards a reliable payout. And a reliable payout is much more valuable in a lot of ways for people who are doing this day in and day out than going to like the broker and the thing and the maybe of the money, maybe 10 mil. Like I'll take 2 mil for sure over 10 mil maybe on something that could be burned in the next, Citizen Lab release. It means something.
The thing
Yeah,
is,
but
they
again,
will
there's no
always be.
retribution and there's no risk. So it doesn't
But
matter
there's
if it's burned by the next Citizen Lab. If you personally are not affected and you don't get named and shamed, I think it's fine. Moreover, you
well,
can get paid in crypto, and you don't have to pay taxes, which I think is also can be a problem if you live in
Well,
some
but you're
countries,
not.
right?
But Kosin, in many of these, my understanding is in many of these cases, they're not getting paid. Like it's not like you just show up and they give you like a briefcase full of money and you shake hands and you walk away, right? Like the in many cases, what happens, as I understand it, is you get, let's say, um, maybe you'll get half up front or a third up front, and then you get paid a certain percentage or a certain amount for every month that the exploit is still valid, and then the minute it gets burned, you're done, right? And it's like a way of it's also a way of controlling that this person doesn't take the money. Oh, I take 10 mil from
then
you and
go
then I
patch
turn
it.
around
Yeah.
and I sell it to Apple, right?
Burn it.
Like so in many ways that gray market has developed its mechanisms to keep itself sort of healthy or honest, and that entails a certain amount of like hedging and fear and uncertainty. And I think that's my main point is I'm glad Apple is talking numbers that are starting to sound like they're closer to the ballpark of the gray market. I think the main mechanism that they can lean into, that they should lean into, that would make them the de facto person to go sell this shit to, is to be reliable and to lean into paying people instead of looking for a reason not to pay them, which is the experience that a lot of folks have with bug bounties, where you go, dude, like especially with this, right? Like the effort that we're talking about, if it takes months, if it takes a bunch of people, then we're not talking about like $2 million for a single individual is a lot of money. $2 million for the work of like 6 specialized people over 3 months is not a ton of money, especially when you don't know if you're going to get paid at all. And like I think that's the part that like Rewards for Justice never figured out. That's why it looks like a fucking scam. But with the bug bounty platforms, with being the richest, one of the richest, if not the richest, cash richest company on earth, just lean into paying these people to develop the relationships. Lean in, even if it's dev null, even if you go, oh, we already knew about this one, just pay their fucking money for the sake of establishing the reputation that goes, dude, why would you put yourself in bed with the Saudis? Just go to Apple and like Ivan will write you a check. That's a way to actually disrupt this.
The
Yeah,
demand
but
for these
we need
commercial,
to.
Costin, the demand for these commercial spyware platforms isn't going away anyway. I just can't help but think this just keeps pushing the prices up because like the demand for zero-click chain, one-click chain, like these things are super, super valuable. Even if Apple shifts the prices from 1 million to 2 million for zero-click chains, remote attack with no user interaction, from 1 million to 2 million. Then one-click ones, which is a remote attack with one-click user action, from $250K up to $1 million. Like you're now helping to push the prices for those things on the gray market, on the black market even higher.
Which is great.
Is this the goal? I mean, Costin, you've always talked about imposing cost and making sure we're raising the bar so high that only a few people are capable of doing this. Is this like a win in your book?
I think it'll be very difficult to keep the bar high from a technical point of view because you need to innovate. So as soon as Apple, introduces some new features, innovation, iOS 26, things like that, there'll be new bugs. They'll introduce new attack surfaces, and then it'll be very difficult to keep these numbers up. And just imagine, I remember the story from a few years ago when was it Zerodium that was actually saying that we have so many zero-click chains that we don't need.
We don't want anymore. Yeah,
we don't buy them anymore. So like these numbers, that Apple is mentioning here, you can't sustain them like for an unlimited amount of time, in the sense that if, let's say, a dozen people just walk in with their 0 days and they're all unique and different from each other, I very much doubt that they will be able to pay every single
still a
one
drop
of
in
them.
the bucket for Apple in the grand scheme of things.
True, but like, what is the total budget of this program? Because we know how these things work. They get a budget of, let's say, $20 million for 5 years. and then they need to pay like for the best bugs with that limited budget. It's not unlimited. So at the same
it
time,
could
I
be.
think it's very important that this program, whatever it works, it has like the carrot and the stick. So if it's just the carrot and paying, like, it will not be enough to shift the tides. You need the stick as well. So maybe they need to work with the Trump administration or whoever to make it more risky to sell 0 days to sanctioned companies or mercenary companies that are known to have been involved in abuses. So only when you have both of them, I think you will make a change.
That's a hot take. One of the other things Apple announced is some
Yeah.
new
Can I stop
categories.
you right there and tell you one story?
Yes,
From
yes.
back in the days. I used to have a friend who was probably very well connected in this field, and he was for sure developing and selling all sorts of capabilities. And he told me once, we met at the conference, and he said, like, I want you to meet some fellows. And I said, okay, who? I said, I can tell you a lot of things about them, but we need to go out and meet them, like, at this location. And I was like already afraid. So yeah, in the evening we go to that place, to that location, and he says, like, allow me to introduce my friends. And then he says, if you have 0 days to sell, they pay the best money on the market. And then I realized, it hit me, that for him, the most important thing was who pays the best money on the market. The risk that we go to, like, this shady place in the evening, that's nothing. Like, it didn't really matter that much as it mattered to me. To him, the only thing which mattered was that those guys, they paid the best money on the market. So, I mean, as long as motivation is high and the payouts are high and people have this mentality and ethics are low, I don't think things will change a lot. I think they'll stay pretty much the same way.
They've added new categories as well to the bug bounty program, including big payouts for gatekeeper bypasses, iCloud access up to $1 million, WebKit sandbox escapes, and an interesting category here, wireless proximity exploits getting $1 million. Do you see Apple's interest in these being triggered by attacks happening in the wild, or this is more conspiracy? Ryan is asking what kind of wireless proximity exploitation is actually happening, or this is more of a theoretical, let's try to do a pen test against specific things.
That is not theoretical.
Conspiracy. Ryan knows exactly what he's asking, and everybody else listening to our show, they know about the tactical suitcases that sell for something like $8 million, $10 million, $12 million, delivering Wi-Fi 0 days that compromise the wireless adapter baseband, and from there they can jump into the car. I don't know. It's things that I heard. If you go to certain conferences and hang out with the right people, essentially there are things like this, tactical suitcases, and I think I've seen photos from.
What do they do?
So what they do is essentially, you get a suitcase in which there's a laptop typically and some wireless equipment, like a lot of antennas.
Like the stuff that the Secret Service just seized.
Possible, something like that. But wireless also in the sense of Wi-Fi here, because that's super popular. And what you need to be is just, you need to be in the proximity of the target. Then they will actually list all the wireless adapter Macs, which are constantly broadcasting and looking for known Wi-Fi networks. And as long as you can identify your target and say, like, this is my target, then you can deliver a 0 day to that target, which eventually it infects their machine with spyware. And there are several companies selling these tactical suitcases. They start at pretty significant prices. And then you have to pay per additional pack of targets. So they support something like, 50 targets. And if you want to infect more than 50, then you need to pay extra. And one such company, I spoke to people who used to work there, and they said, like, oh yeah, we have customers in a dozen European countries. We only sell to NATO, we only sell to European Union countries, and we have over a dozen customers. and all our customers, they're super happy. So this is probably okay in the sense that a lot of abuses, by the way, happen when the target and the attacker, they're not in the same country, right? I know Algeria spying on Macron or things like that. That's like super extreme cases.
Do you put the Volexity finding about Wi-Fi proximity in Washington D.C. with that Russian attack in this category of wireless proximity exploits that Apple is really interested in here?
I don't think so. No, I think what they're targeting are exactly these tactical suitcases that we have seen, which leverage 0 days in the wireless adapter baseband, and they have the ability to infect your computer. They just need to be in like a range of something like 100 meters from the target. So these, for instance, are extremely powerful when you use them in airports, when you use them effectively when you're tracking your target, let's say, and you can follow them like physically with a minivan or maybe at a cafe, and you just follow them for a, let's say, long period of time, then you can guess their wireless adapter MAC, and then you can target their phones, you can target their computers, their laptops, and so on.
So $1 million. Sorry, Juanito, I didn't realize you were there because you're still there. Okay, sorry. Oh, we lost him.
We lost him.
We lost him. He crashed out. The question I was going to ask you as a quick follow-up was this $1 million price for these wireless proximity exploits suggests that Apple thinks this is a significant issue, or Apple knows these suitcases are a significant problem, right?
I'm building suspense.
Yes.
I was building suspense.
You're good.
Because I think we probably reached a point where these are actually more powerful and more prevalent, and Apple doesn't have the same ability to spot and catch them as they have with, let's say, browser-based exploitation, with iMessage-based exploitation, and so on. So the artifacts may be a lot less scarce. You don't get the same kind of logs, payloads. I think I remember there were a few cases of not just Wi-Fi, but like pure wireless. I mean, wireless/GSM exploitation targeting Android phones, if I remember correctly, the case that I am familiar with. And the security in that space is very lax, is very poor. Also, the ability to catch them and to patch them is also very, very low. So it makes absolute sense. It makes total sense to me that they're willing to throw $1 million into these kind of exploits.
Juan, you were making a point about this before.
So yeah, I was going to say,
camera's working fine, lights are fine.
So
don't stress about anything.
Fede Kirschbaum in the chat last time said that my camera had been focusing on the background instead of me, and I remembered that, and I'm like, oh, I'll open the software, and the minute I did that, it went to update the firmware for the camera and just like crashed it all out.
Security,
so that's
always security.
My bad. So it makes perfect sense when you think about like what are we talking about with these exploit chains, right? Like when we talk about the normal exploit chain, the whole point is that you have some way of like remotely getting this device to load something, and then once you're in it, as long as you don't kick off things with like persistence or other mechanisms that might throw off like sandbox entitlements and so on, you're basically scot-free. And the expensive part here is how much is being put into like defending, let's say these parsers, or like you're in lockdown mode, right? Like the thing isn't even working at all. But all of that is defending a very specific entry vector. And if you can somehow fuck with the Bluetooth stack, or you can somehow fuck with the Wi-Fi stack, you're home free, right? Like none of the shit that we were just describing really applies to you. And I think that's actually, it's actually really interesting that this is being put in there in that category as an acknowledgement of that reality that we've all known about this whole time, and also I think showing some of the shortcomings of Apple's approach. The reason you wanted to do the threat intel shit properly, the reason that you do want to have an on-device like telemetry generation and ability to do incident response properly, is that you have to account for the realities of the space, not the theoretical, well, this is how, if someone was going to do it, we think they would do it this way. So we're only going to put all our eggs in this one fucking basket. And then you find out later on, it never occurred to us that somebody would, I don't fucking know, exploit this other thing, come up with this other way. And that's how they've been loading their malware. And I think that's what a lot of our careers, especially Costin, who's discovered so many like genuinely like concept breaking new things where you go, holy shit, this threat actor has been doing X. They've been, affecting infecting the firmware of the hard drive. They've been setting up a bootkit that loads the operating system instead of, the operating system loading the malware, right? Like those types of things are situations where, had we had the discussion, and I'm sure the discussion has been had with the manufacturer or the relevant protector of that software, they would say, that's not going to happen. That's a theoretical concern. And then you show up and go, here's a threat actor that's been doing it for 6 fucking years.
Yeah.
And I think that's a dynamic that Apple has neglected, or just not really given the right kind of attention. And in this case, this is an admission that they've dealt with it. And I think that that's fascinating. I think it's great. And I'm glad they're willing to pay for it, because that is an area that also needs the same kind of love and attention, right?
From that budget that Ivan Kirstich got for this program, he got 1,000 iPhone 17s that Apple says they will donate to civil society groups to ostensibly to pass it down the chain. With iPhone 17s, with the new memory integrity enforcement technology that we talked about recently. I believe his Hexagon talk was the technical details of that, and doing his promo tour around MIE. Costing 1,000 iPhones is a big deal.
Yes. I think this is probably the most significant security initiative that I have seen from Apple recently, trying to help these groups. And keep in mind that an iPhone 17 with this memory integrity enforcement in lockdown mode with iMessages and FaceTime disabled and running something like Signal on it, it's a formidable tool.
You still got to use WhatsApp though, right?
I said with Signal on it. I don't know if they'll be using WhatsApp, but even our friends at WhatsApp nowadays, they are like super
on top of things. Yeah.
On top of things. Shout outs to our friend Ivan, the other Ivan at WhatsApp. The other Ivan, right? So to me, this is fantastic. I like that very much. The only question is, of course, which groups, like civil society, who decides which groups in which countries?
Bill Maher,
Citizen Lab will get 500, and they'll distribute it to their 500 people within their network that are popular targets. I mean, that's a win, right?
Would be nice to have some transparency in there, like how are these distributed and what is the kind of impact
criteria
they're making.
Yeah.
I would love to see a report saying how much exploits, attempts, these mitigated, how many were stopped, and things like that. And obviously, if we were like in our company, like back in the days, people would be beating us very hard with the stick to justify those money. Like they want to see the return on investment. They want to see the success stories with the journalists, with these civil society groups, is essentially promoting and emphasizing how good these Apple devices were for their operations. Which
1,000
again,
devices out
they
the marketing budget is nothing, though.
Really?
Well,
much is
wait.
It's
But
like a million?
that's, I mean, honestly,
million and
Apple
a
could
half.
do this. Apple could do this 1,000 times over, and it would still not be a lot of money for Apple. And I think that is part of the discussion that we're having about like the exploit chains, right? When you go, like when I say they just need to reliably pay out, like I don't give a fuck what your budget is, and you shouldn't give a fuck what your budget is. Like this is about supporting the entire iOS platform, which is the most secure operating system on earth as far as we know, and like that is worth whatever money you have to pay, even if you have to pay redundantly. With these devices, I say 1,000 devices, none for Costin, which is kind of sad. But
I don't qualify.
You don't qualify. What I'm really interested in though is like, how are these devices prepped? Like, what makes these devices different? Is it just like a different, software
Should
thing?
be out
Is it
of
a
the box
different
iPhone
hardware
17.
thing? Well, no, but like they're research devices, and the whole point of it
The
is that they're
research
set up
devices.
differently, right? And that's, I think, you know what I like about that is I like the idea that it's going to make these threat actors have to once again hedge their bets and go like the same mentality that threat actors have around Windows machines, where they go, well, what version and what security solutions on there? You know, like there was a time when we saw things that like would just not infect things that had Kaspersky on them, or not infect things that had Sentinel-1 on them, or whatever. And you go, cool. They did some testing. They figured out that the detection is solid enough, or they're worried about the cloud component, or they're worried about whatever. So they just avoid that threat, like that target altogether. And that's something that nobody on iOS has had to think about, really, not meaningfully. Because you go, oh, they're all the same devices out the box. And look, these people on that podcast won't stop bitching about how they can't defend these devices. So just hit whoever the fuck you want. Hit Macron for all it matters. They're all the same devices. And for once, you're starting to kind of like, hopefully you're adding that question mark of people being like, is this one of those research devices? Is this going to get our fucking $10 million exploit chain burned? Like that is actually valuable.
Speaking of Macron, we got fresh news this morning. Costin, you noticed this one, is the head of UniCredit being targeted by Paragon with a 0-click delivered by iMessage, I believe. We know for a fact that Paragon tools are being used by in parts of the world here. Why is this one significant? The UniCredit CEO being targeted in Italy.
I think it's a huge story. It's probably not receiving enough attention, but it's also a very new story. I think I saw it around 4 p.m. my time, so that was like just 2 hours before we started recording. And pretty much all the other victims, Paragon, Graphite victims that we know about and that were exposed before, they were journalists, they were activists, so they were like people involved in that side of politics, I don't know, exposing government corruption, if you want, or being anti, I don't know, immigration policies and so on.
Understandable targets.
More or less, but understandable from the point of view of, let's say,
from an academic point of view, from
logical targets, like the kind of targets that a government or an adversary or another government, let's say, would be targeting. But
the reason these tools exist and are so valuable, right?
Maybe. But yeah, the head of UniCredit, an Italian bank, right, targeted by this, I think it's a totally different case. And we haven't seen targeting of, let's say, business people and bankers and such in the past, because most of the targeting is extremely expensive, so you need to choose these targets very carefully. So in this case, I mean, people are speculating or saying that simply because he was involved in politics as well, that's one of the reasons why he was targeted. He got a notification from Apple in April, I think on April 29th this year. So I say that probably he was also involved in politics, but what this story essentially teaches us is that you don't have to be an activist, you don't have to be a journalist to be targeted by these tools. Like, look, head of UniCredit in Italy was also targeted. That means that other people can get targeted. I know, like from my sources, from other cases that I have seen, which is that CEOs and other business people also got these notifications, not just politicians, not just activists, business people, in particular, powerful business leaders involved in big deals, mergers and acquisitions, people who leverage and turn a lot of money. They also got these notifications from Apple and from Meta. So I think that this story, once again, it just confirms how these tools are actually used. And it tells us that, yeah, especially if you're the CEO of a large company, that you should worry about. If you work in one of these companies in IT security, then you should care about your leaders. You should care about your executives. And I think one of the most important things is that you need to establish a program to actually check their phones regularly for infections, and not just companies but governments. One of the things that I hear a lot is essentially a lot of governments do not have thorough programs to regularly check the phones of people in positions of power, like ministers, senators, and so on, for malware infections. And whenever they get these notifications, they keep them to themselves. They don't tell anyone because they're afraid, they're ashamed, they're worried, whatever. So I know that a lot of governments are looking into this, trying to build programs to actually handle this issue. And the same, I think, should be true with companies. Remember, like the triangulation story, even Kaspersky said, who was targeted? All the top managers. So it was targeting all the top management in the company. So I mean, yeah, you should think about establishing forensics and methodology to handle these cases in companies.
When you mention executive CEOs, your source is saying that a lot of these guys get them. There's a lot of economic espionage happening by these tools, or this is like a small, tiny thing? And then how do we counter that? Does this change the perception of what these companies are, these parasite companies are, if they're enabling this kind of thing in addition to everything else?
That's tricky. I don't think it's necessarily economic espionage in the sense of stealing secrets, but more in the sense of being able to know inside things which they can
secret.
Leverage in deals, right?
That's a stolen secret.
It's a stolen secret. It's not like Chinese style stolen secret, right? When they're like stealing formulas for
just
vaccines,
monitoring negotiation stances and stuff, right?
But knowing that they are discussing internally, well, I hope to God that they will not bring this issue into discussion,
Right.
and this is the issue that they actually bring
Just
into
knowing
discussion.
the numbers, man. Like that was
No.
classic Chinese like negotiation tactics in Latin America, Africa forever. You walk in knowing exactly what the limits are, like how much money you can spend, how much like what your budget is. Like that's the end of the negotiation right there.
Yeah.
Right.
And especially when these kind of negotiations are kept on like country level. I don't know, the country X is waiting on buying Huawei 5G technology or Nokia, and they have $20 million. Huawei comes and their technology is $19.999 million.
Right up to the edge.
So yeah, I don't admit that I understand the reasoning behind some of the cases that I have seen and why those people are targeted, because it can't be country level deals. But I mean, some
valuable
of these
to
things,
someone.
It's probably valuable to someone, and we probably don't have the full picture. I mean, this is one of the things that I learned is when victims don't make sense, it can either be a mistake or we don't have the full picture. I've seen mistakes, including funny mistakes in which people with the similar name were hit with something because simply they had the name that was similar to someone else, or like, yeah, I mean,
Juanito wouldn't have that problem at all.
No.
Juanito, no.
If they hit me, they mean to hit me, right?
There's no Juan Andres. I remember, by the way, we were joking with our good friend Vicente. If you remember Vicente Diaz, who's now with VirusTotal. If you Google Vicente Diaz, there's like a famous Spanish singer, like Grand Éxitos style of singer from back in the day. So that's like the most famous Vicente Diaz in the normal people world. In our world, it's our Vicente, obviously.
Speaking of things in this space that I don't understand at all, is news coming out this week that the NSO Group, which is like the poster child for this world, has been acquired by U.S. investors. There's a report out of Israel that was confirmed by TechCrunch that a Hollywood producer named Robert Simons has led the deal, subject to Israel and U.S. regulatory review. Question for you, Juan, right off the bat is, how do you acquire a company that's either sanctioned or on the entity list? Like, help me understand what kind of shenanigans are happening here.
I don't understand what kind of shenanigans are happening here. Let's start there. I also think it's hilarious to talk about like them doing this deal for tens of millions when like I'm pretty sure NSO had to like buy Francisco Partners shares back for like $500 million or something like that. It was like the numbers are like have cratered, and I think the minute that you're talking about having a Hollywood producer be the one managing your deal, right? Like we are clearly scraping the bottom of the barrel and probably gaming folks who have perceptions that may not be entirely well informed. At the same time, I think it's really telling that they're willing to let this kind of embarrassing bullshit happen because it lets you know that there's nothing of value left within NSO as a structure, like as a corporate structure.
The
And
product and the tool still exists and it is in use, though, right?
well, but is it NSO? Is it NSO or is it NSO2 in Cyprus? Is it NSO or is it NSO3 in Saudi or UAE? Right? Like you now.
What does that mean?
You,
Is there like you're dropping like
I'm making names up, but it's like a
okay.
well-known thing in the industry that most of these companies, basically around the time that NSO gets sanctioned, most of these Israeli companies basically just fold, close up shop, and all of a sudden you see companies pop up in Cyprus or Saudi Arabia or the UAE, and it's the same talent, it's the same people, it's the same, general structure. For all we don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if contracts just got transferred over. Like, oh, you're no longer an NSO customer, now you're a customer of the Royal Bank of NSO, in Riyadh or whatever the fuck you want to call it, and it goes to show kind of the frailty of the sanctions mechanism in going after a company in particular and not affecting the
Individuals?
the individuals or the underlying structure somehow, right? Like you have not in any way affected the operations of that company. You took a shell of a name and put a lot of like look, if putting sanctions down was as easy as like clicking like 2 clicks at the finance department, whatever, and you go click, now that's sanctioned, and then tomorrow if they come up with a new company, then we will also click and sanction that too, then I don't care. But it takes so much effort to enforce any kind of sanctions against a given entity, and then the minute they rename the entity or they get a different company, like then you're going to have to go through that whole process again. It's just not a mechanism that's fit for purpose in slowing these people down. And the other side of this is I don't know what this producer is trying to do or like what the value is in all of this. I
Wait a second.
I
You don't
wait.
you don't believe that this NSO Group acquisition here by this Robert Simons is the NSO company that we know?
No, I think it is by in name only.
That's
Like
what I
you,
mean, though. When I say the company we know, the company with
it is the
with a
company we
tool
know.
that's listen. These
But here's
guys
the
were
thing.
boasting that they were helping the Israeli army in the war.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
I wouldn't be surprised if they were or they weren't. But the issue here is really if you know how these sort of company acquisitions play out, especially these like skeletons or like little startups or whatever, what is attached to the company, right? Like the talent that developed the thing and the talent that ran the thing, the talent that grew the software, it may not be there anymore. It's almost, especially with a sanctioned entity, it's almost certainly not there anymore. Then, like, we know how these operations work. You have a platform and you have an implant, and then what's fueling it is actually the exploit chains, which are ephemeral, and the contracts that you have. The fact that you have the right connections with governments and so on, and they believe you and they trusted you enough that they put money and contracting cycles, right? Like that the bureaucracy looks like. So those are the two most valuable things that company has, is essentially like this software. Well, three: the software stack, the talent that produces and maintains it, and the customers that it has. So I don't think the talent, there's no way that the talent is there. anymore. Like, no fucking way. This is hard enough with just a normal and healthy and legal company to like get through a startup and actually have your talent want to be there. Um, I'm I will be, I don't know. So I would be shocked if they haven't somehow moved the contracts and whatnot to some other entity, assuming that, you know, Julio and all these other folks are still intent on maintaining what is a very profitable business for them and almost a sanctioned resilient business, which is an insane situation to be in. Um, I would not be surprised if they were moving all of that to their new venture in the UAE, whatever. And so what do you have left? Are you just basically selling a company that has a platform that can do iOS whatever, but you're selling it to people who are not savvy enough to understand that without the exploits, without the talent to develop the exploits, without the contracts into existing, like what you're buying is like a shitty, like a, you know, random quality infection platform that is not going to work and you're not going to be able to do anything with unless you can supplement the two things that you're not getting. So unless Hollywood producers have some good exploit broker contacts, like I really don't, I think this is like somebody getting played hard. And I'm assuming that what they think is because Paragon was bought by AE and that was a very profitable venture and that they're now seeing like possible contracts with the US government, that they're going to be able to do the same if they just like pick up this bucket that is NSO, such a recognizable brand, blah blah. But I just do not see how you're not being sold like a bill of goods. Like you're definitely getting played here.
Costin, you think he's on the right
Maybe.
track?
I was also thinking that perhaps one of the possibilities here is the talent would be willing to return if the company was to change hands and come back into the kosher side of things with the US government. So if, let's say, it gets bought by Hollywood, then suddenly, you know, the sanctions are lifted and then it's, again, the best place to work nowadays. And then the talent simply returns. So perhaps it's part of this whole strategy to make it viable again. So, of course, we may never know. We'll
This
have to
was
see.
this was always a jewel in the eyes of Israel. The NSO Group had a big building up. There was like it was
Yeah.
a standard there, and I believe the Israeli government also has used it in part of bargaining chips and so on. So the idea that the NSO Group gets sold out to US is significant in some fronts. I don't know what tech is going with it, which customers are going with it. I don't even know if it's a real deal, to be honest with you, because there's been no like official announcement. There's just been like some
Could
press
be
reports
part
and
of the
confirmation.
agreement to whitewash it, to make it safe again, to make it reputable, to lift the sanctions and so on.
What's
Like TikTok.
valuable? What's valuable about it? Like let's right, like this thing has been sanctioned, which in itself is not going to get reversed that easily. But even if it were, it's not like it's Microsoft where it's like 120,000, you know, person organization and all these patents and all this software and all these buildings
used
and
to be, though,
properties and
right?
contracts and whatever. No, I mean, never at that level, right? Like you're still talking about
Not
at
at a
best
Microsoft level, but yeah.
but that's my point. What is the value of fighting for it, right? Like this is, you don't want the brand value in
That
espionage
might even be
is,
negligible. Yeah.
it's exactly no, dude. It's not even. It's a counterproductive thing, right? Like what happened to Hacking Team? Hacking Team had gotten burned a bunch of times. There have been technical reports and whatever. But like once your brand becomes like a matter of like kitchen table discussion for policy wonks in DC, you have fucked up royally,
A
right?
long
Like
time ago, yeah.
a long time ago. So like I just have a hard time seeing what about NSO as a corporate structure has any value whatsoever other than like whatever intellectual property, software, or possible contracts you hope to transfer over. And then my point becomes that it's almost certain that this thing will be worthless unless you're attaching it to a place that knows how to use it, knows how to develop for it, knows how to maintain it, which is like dude, if Paragon or Quadream or whomever was buying NSO, then I would say, oh, NSO must have built some pretty cool internal tooling, or they still have like 20 contracts with a bunch of governments that last for another 5 years. And these people are being smart and saying, oh, we're going to take this carcass and we will expand our business with something we didn't already have. And that would be, it would be really interesting. But it's being like, if it's so, fuck the fact that it's like a Hollywood producer, like that alone, that makes it sound like hilarious and silly. But even if it was like,
Diluted the story, right?
Yeah, but no, I think that just like it just made the punchline really obvious. But like if it had been, even if it had been like a VC or a hedge fund or a financial institution or whatever the fuck that doesn't know how to maintain and run these things, I would be equally skeptical, because I think that, you know, I just thinking about it from an M&A perspective, I just cannot think, I cannot come up with something that makes this husk valuable.
All right, enough about Apple and spyware. Let's update a couple of quick stories, because this one
took like a fucking hour on this. This is insane.
Yeah, an hour and 15 minutes on the one story. And I have another story I wanted us to touch on. Last week on this podcast, Costin, you and I were digging through the Oracle CPU patch update for July, because the chief security officer told us that, you know, people had not been patched, and this e-business ransomware thing, this CLOP ransomware extortion attacks were happening. This week we find out that all of that was a waste of time. It was actually 0-day. It was actually a brand new CVE 2025-61882 that these guys were actually exploiting. And we find out because another ransomware gang that's a rival of CLOP outed them and dropped their exploit that we were able to confirm was 0-day. Two things here. Why? Juanito, we talked about this. We know Oracle is a company that are versed and have very high quality people, very, very talented people. Why is the chief security officer at Oracle providing bad guidance for a week?
I don't know. What was so bad about it? Because like I'm
felt
feeling
like some
relatively...
victim shaming. Let me throw it out what was bad about it. It felt a little bit of victim shaming. This is a July patch that we issued a long time ago. Go back and do your thing. A little bit of that came out to me. Turns out it's actual O-Day.
Wait, but it was a thing where it's like you have this patch and they said, and like we're investigating and we will provide more, and then they did. So like this is the part where I want to like I don't want to. Sorry, let's be fair, and I'm feeling particularly partial towards Oracle. I'll admit it.
Same with me.
Because so like
but this was a fuck up.
But well, let's play this one out, right? First of all, Oracle is it's by far not a new company, but it is a new player in the security, in the engagement with the security space in this way. I don't mean, sorry, Ryan, you're giving me the look. You're giving me the right look. What should I say? Let's put this differently. I think this is the first time I've seen them drop any threat intel.
Fair.
So to me, I'm judging them not as a massive old school incumbent mega corporation, but rather I'm saying like, welcome to the scene. There's going to be some mistakes. The muscles are not well developed yet. This is your first time doing this. Welcome. I'm happy that you're here. I'm sorry that it's under these circumstances. Then we talked about it, I think, in a surprisingly measured way last episode, which is very unlike me, where we said, you know what, give them a little bit. Let's see what happens, right? Like that they may, if they dig in further in the wrong direction, then, you know, we're perfectly right in like skewering them, but like maybe they'll do better. And then frankly, what I saw after, which is like, I got a call the day after the podcast drop. And they were like, look, this is where the state of the investigation is. This is, you know, what we found so far. This is what we know. They were very frank about like, this is the state of that platform. It's fairly old school, like whatever. Like this is not an impressive vulnerability that you're going to see. It's just like part of having a legacy business. And then they went, these are the O-days. Sorry, these are the IPs. This is why we think it's CLOP, and we're going to release more stuff. And the next day they dropped it publicly. So they had gone around talking to whomever they could on the private side, and they eventually dropped the blog. Yeah, they had a no day and it got exploited. And, it's probably it being massively exploited by a ransomware gang is a bad fucking look, especially for like a business product and like that going straight to corporations. None of it is a nice situation. And you should have the discussion that you're trying to have of like, well, why the fuck is this your first one, right? You've been around, like they're basically like a dinosaur of a company in the tech space, which means they're like a well-established one. Okay, sure. I give you all of that, but I also want to just kind of like recognize that they started on
You're giving them long rope. I get it. You're giving them.
No, but I'm saying like I'm giving them some rope, and they're not fucking like they're not putting it to waste. Like I've seen these people working, and like even after that, I see them reaching out in trust groups and asking people, hey, do you have any more on this? Do you have any more on that? Oh man, these people dropped the blog. Could somebody put us in touch with them? Like we want to talk to them about whatever. Like they are really in it. So like whatever
You're always in it when there's a crisis, man. I'm going to be the counter to it. I love my friends at Oracle. You know that.
Yeah.
I mean, the head of assurance there is someone I respect and admire. I know what's happening.
No.
Their chief security officer is getting bad guidance. Going out last week to say,
Sure.
go apply July patch and you'll be fine is
right.
bullshit. And the fact that they didn't know better and they put him to provide that guidance was just a comms mistake.
Well,
say what you know. We don't know. We believe. Give me some better language than just go apply this July critical patch update.
Look, the CISO statement or the CSO statement was a fuck up, and like.
But the comms is a crucial part of all of it.
I
official
agree,
comms from Oracle is a crucial part of it. We just can't accept fuck up and say, it was a fuck up. Like you had people scrambling to.
Let's break this up into its components. So I think the issue that we have here is because Oracle is new to us in this space, in this way of doing things, we lack granularity. Because if this were Microsoft, we would say, fuck this person, and so did this thing bad. However, Mystic did this great thing, and Dart is doing this whatever. And with Oracle, we lack that. And all the public is going to see is this CISO statement, or CSO statement, which is a shame because it's a bad one. And clearly these people need better advice on crisis comms. And, at the same time, I don't pretend to know what Oracle wants because we have a playbook, and Ryan, like you're a master at that fucking crisis comms playbook because we played it under the most adverse possible circumstances before. And we have a playbook for what it means to come out looking good and winning and winning ground. Here's a crisis. Let me use it to establish better relationships. Here's a crisis. Let me use it to build trust in my brand and executives, right?
Proof transparency,
Yeah, you have a crisis, but in that crisis, I'm going to show you that I'm here for you and that I'm leaning in and that you can trust my word and like that I'm just like that. And that's the part that these corporations miss is
it has to be real though.
It has to be. Well, but in this case, I think it can be because we know that there's these tech pockets that what they're lacking is a brand, right? Like if they had the Delphic research team and like that was the threat intel team, you can take that, guys. I think that's pretty good. And that's their threat intel team, and those people are building a brand, and now they have a conference, and they're sponsoring security events, and now they're asking for disclosures and like all that shit. We would be standing those dudes, and we would just be looking at the C-suite going, hey, go listen to your fucking people. They know what they're doing. In this case, we're seeing that play out. It's just obvious that the C-suite at Oracle is not getting the right advice. They don't know how to do the right comms, and because it's the first time they're having to do this publicly, they don't know how this plays out. Where you can make a statement today that gets people off your back in the first week, but in the long run, it's going to make your customers not trust you anymore. Because they go, when we had this crisis, all you gave us was this bullshit. Or like, your tech guys helped us, but publicly you left everybody else out to dry. Like shit like that, it makes you look like just a company that cannot be trusted on security. And at the end of the day, once there's an awareness that of your product as a source of vulnerability, if you cannot be trusted for security, that is the ballpark. That is the end of that conversation. They will go looking, or they're going to wait until the day that like Google shows up, Salesforce shows up, whomever, and says, why the fuck are you still using that? We have this thing and let us give it to you for cheap and you try it. And once you turn on that, you're done. The people who've been using this fucking Oracle EBS shit have probably been using it for 20 fucking years without even thinking about it, right? So it's a weird situation. I think Oracle's fumbled it from a business perspective more than from a security. From a security one, I think they're doing fine. They're doing well. Like those dudes are working hard.
Remotely exploitable without authentication, CVSS base score 9.8. The Oracle advisory came with indicators like Juanito mentioned. Costin, what does this Oracle EBS ND exploit POC scattered lapsus retard clop hunters? What is the significance of that?
You can't use the R word. You had to redact the redacted clop hunters.
Is there a conspiracy, Ryan, question here?
Ryan? You mean Ryan is the forbidden word, or which one?
No, it's a part of the file name, man.
Do you remember, like, was it the last episode that you asked me, like, how should this warning actually look like? And we were saying, like, it should be like, this is what we know so far, and that, and that, and that, and then at the end, indicators of compromise. And either perhaps the Oracle people are listening to our
Shout out
podcast.
to the Oracle
Shout out if they're listening.
They called Juanito after, apparently.
And look, like, how do they say? Like, you ask and you get it. It's in the Bible, right? Ask it and you should get.
You shall receive.
Seek and you shall receive. We received. Like, there's an indicators of compromise table here with some IP addresses. Then there's like these 3 hashes. And I was happy when I saw that. The only thing is that when I looked at the hashes, and I think that originally when they published, there wasn't any description. And then they updated this on October the 6th. So originally it was published on October the 4th. And then
you didn't
on the
have
6th,
the description, right? You didn't have this description with his name. You had to go find it.
And I went to VT and I grabbed them, and then I was like, what's going on here? Like, what? Who are these people? Like, what is going on? And obviously the top question here is how did they find them on VirusTotal? Like, or who uploaded them to VirusTotal? Like, what is going on? It just feels there's another side to this story here. Whoever got them, who are those guys? Are they really another competitor group, or is it like a 3-letter agency posing as a competitor group? Who are those? And yeah,
well, who do you think it is? What is your gut? What is your gut feeling? You gotta ask. You can't be asking questions on the podcast. Your job is to answer.
You know me. I like conspiracies. Like the conspiracy world is better than the real world. I think that someone saw the initial blog and they were like facepalm. You know, the Picard from Star Trek with the facepalm, and no, it's not the July thingy, guys. And they're like, okay, how do we convey the message? And okay, let's upload it to VT. Let's pretend that we are this group.
Let's tell Oracle to go look at this VT identifier.
Oracle go patch that thingy, and everybody's happy.
So this is just a POC. That was.
It's yeah.
Well, I don't.
It's a working POC.
Let's break this up in several things. First of all, I think the upload to VT is just the defenders trying to share in a TLP green fashion, right? So like, I don't think that the VT upload. My assumption is that the VT upload did not come from the disclosures. Then had we not had this weird branding around it, and like, I would have assumed that this came to us the way that every O-Day comes to Ivanti and Fortinet and so on, which is the magical mystery research community in the middle of things found this on, some infrastructure, ran into it in the middle of an investigation, and they went to the vendor and said, hey, you idiots, you're getting exploited. You obviously don't know this, but we found the exploit. So here's literally the script that's being used. So go fix your shit. And that dynamic is what makes me be so critical of Fortinet and Ivanti and so on, where I know you motherfuckers are not discovering any of this. It's being handed to you, and then you want to act as if you can be trusted. So fuck you. That theory kind of goes out the window in this case, because I've seen 1,000 of those situations, and I've never seen them brand it like a fucking comm kid on crack and like put all these insults and stuff. So there does seem to be some element of this that is some weird drama between, you know, some of these groups. So maybe, I mean, like, what happens if somebody defected from Clop and went over to Shiny Hunters and like took the exploit with them? Or like, you know, like there's all kinds of ways that this could kind of play. And these things are that petty, right? Like they are internet squabbles, right? So I don't know the truth. I just think that in this case, there is a possible story here that's kind of hilarious. And I don't know. I don't fucking know.
Pretty big sting though, because I saw Austin from Google Threat Intelligence say this is in the hundreds, perhaps thousands of companies affected. And I just want to make one last point here before we move on from this story. Well, 2 points. One is, for all the shit I'm giving Oracle, shout out to Oracle, like Costin said, to actually providing some indicators, helping people to go accelerate detection, threat hunting, and containment. That's all we ask. Like, at the very least, you got your shit to deal with. Help your customers deal with this shit that you pass down to them. So shout out to Oracle for that. Hopefully more companies do this at the end of it. The second point I want to make here is I'm noticing more and more journalists hanging out on these leak sites, communicating with these ransomware assholes, and then going back to companies and saying, yes, I saw the data, it's real. Like, you're enabling that shit. Like, you're part of the ecosystem, in my opinion. I could call names because I see it happening all the time. I'm not going to call names. But if you're a journalist hanging out on a leak site and confirming that, yes, it is Clop, and going back to a company like NVIDIA and saying, yes, I saw the leaked stuff and it's real and it's true, and then going and writing a story that, yes, you saw NVIDIA's data on a leak site after you're part of the problem. I'm sorry.
I agree.
Thank you, Costin.
Call names. Call names.
No names.
So,
no names yet.
Wait. I will uncharacteristically
This is not research.
No, I will uncharacteristically come out in defense of one thing. It may not be research, and it is contributing to enabling certain extortion demands. However, I do think there's a legitimate reason for those journalists to be there and to be a part of this, which is how often the vendors pretend that is not actually happening. The ransomware crew goes, hey, we have all your fucking data, and your MSSP, your vendor, your appliance provider, they lie and they go, they don't have your data, that's bullshit. Or like, it's not as bad as they say they are. Or we know everything about these guys, they're not going to disclose it. And there's the only thing that gets us to the public conversation and the customers having some semblance of what is actually going on is a journalist that goes, I don't know what the fuck so-and-so's talking about. I saw the data myself, it's there. And like, so, you know, there is a countervailing force here that I'm all for them. Or look, the other one, right? Your PII got leaked because your vendor got popped in part of a ransomware thing, and they send out an email that says, none of your passwords or passports or anything important has actually leaked. And the only reason we know that's not true is because a vendor, like a journalist, is in the back paying attention. Like I'm saying there's a legitimate one there. I'm not saying it's good for the ecosystem. I just I don't fault a journalist being in there in the first place. You know?
Journalists hanging out on leak sites is legitimate news gathering. I give you that 100%. If you should get in there and you should be news gathering and doing your thing. Journalists writing naming and shaming stories after vendors refuse to pay a ransom, and journalists writing stories that saying this company's data is there for sure, and you've only been given that because the ransomware guys want you to name and shame this vendor into speeding up a payment process. That's bullshit. And I see more and more of that.
I'll give you that.
It's just and it's called journalism today because everyone is chasing the newest TikTok bullshit. So
Not only that,
That's
but
my
remember when ransomware groups were actually launching programs for journalists in which they were willing to share some of the profits with journalists who are
Whoa.
willing to hype the stories.
Right.
So that's like
there's
a
an
real
entire
thing.
ecosystem of like ugliness there that I'm calling attention to. I'm seeing it more and more in news stories, guys hanging out on leak sites and confirming that this vendor is affected. And yes, I saw this piece of data, and I'm like, dude, you're enabling that shit.
I mean, we have to do it too. Like
Speak.
Jim Walter was writing me Friday night at 1:30 in the morning about like the output of this leak site. What was it with the fucking timer that was supposed to clock out last night, right? Like we have to do that.
It's
So in
legitimate
some way,
research. The
yeah,
other part of it isn't. Communicating with these guys and helping to be part of ransomware negotiations is a problem.
yeah.
I want to shift gears quickly. Speaking of vendors and problems, Ivanti. I just noticed this.
No.
Our favorite vendor, Ivanti, they reminded us they were the first people to sign the Secure by Design pledge. They were the very, very first there to sign the Secure by Design pledge.
They've had the
Just
longest
got
with it.
ZDI, the zero-day initiative that buys vulnerabilities and buys vulnerability details and so on, released 14 new Ivanti advisories, bare bones advisories with no technical details, marked as zero-day because they remain unpatched. And they remain unpatched because Ivanti is asking for 6-month extension after agreeing. Like in one case, there was a bunch of them. There's 14 advisories on the ZDI page, all marked as O-day. No technical details, no patch information, and so on. The only mitigation offered is, given the nature of this vulnerability, the only salient mitigation strategy is to restrict interaction with the product, which is basically don't use this product. But in the timeline that the ZDI published to justify their reason for going O-day is July 2025, the vendor communicated that the issue would be patched in September 2025. And then in July 29th, 5 days later, the vendor requested an extension until March 2026 for a variety of these vulnerabilities that are all remote code execution, like pre-authentication, post-authentication. So pretty gnarly looking things. Ivanti, we know, has been in the muck of this thing. What do you make of this, Costin? Is this something that surprises you? Like, what do you make of this mess?
Look, you are dropping some numbers there. You said like 6 months. Like to me, let's just for people to visualize what that means. So ZDI reported this vulnerability in June of this year, and in September, or apologies, in July, Ivanti requests an extension until March 2026. So that's like a total of what, 9 months? 9 months required to patch this 0 days.
To not patch. They're still not patched.
I mean, yeah, it tells a lot. I remember there was a discussion at the Countermeasure conference a few years ago, and there was, I think, a Canadian general who was talking about a couple of things and security of different platforms from different vendors, and he said the amount of 0 days in some specific platform is not the most important metric. One of the most important metrics is actually how fast they're able to patch those 0 days. Can they patch them in a day? Can they patch them in a week? And how responsive they are. If they request like 9 months to patch these potentially like super disruptive 0 day vulnerabilities, I think that's a very bad mark.
It's a symptom of how shitty things are in the background.
Correct, it's a symptom, and it's not the problem, as always, not the symptom. The problem is the disease, and how do you fix that? If you ask me, I don't know. I mean, nowadays, whenever you mention Ivanti, there's another 0 day in Ivanti. Oh yeah, and the water is wet. Yeah, what else is needed?
And this is a security vendor. I remind folks that Ivanti sells security products. This is a security vendor that, we should hold them to the highest possible standard. They signed the pledge and made a big deal out of it. It's not unfair for me to call attention to this shit after you've paraded yourself as like a Juanito, talk to me.
You know what? Yeah, no. You know what I'm curious about? Why that date? I'm curious if we had let them go, if they were gonna announce the products were like end of life and they
Mm,
were coming out with like a new thing. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
I'm
this,
not
it's
gonna
like
patch this.
mm.
Like you can't give them the
it's
benefit of any doubt
I
whatsoever. You
can't
look
give
for the
him the
most
benefit of any
nefarious
doubt.
thing.
Exactly. Like the most sleaziest possible thing here
That's the
would have been
expectation.
that's my expectation of it, and that
Fuck.
says everything. And that says fucking everything because you guys know I'm not being unfair. Like I would not be surprised because like what excuse do you have for not like you need an omnibus of patches? You're gonna re-engineer the entire software platform. Okay, re-engineer it, but issue a fucking patch, right? Like it just nothing about this is the right way to go about it. And we also know it's not their first one; it's their umpteenth one. So clearly, there's like there, in my view, it's hard to look at Ivanti and not think that they are an entirely incompetent vendor for what they're selling. And that is not, it's not uh, just a pure perception without substantiation, considering that Ivanti is a company that's selling something made up entirely of like acquisitions and rebrands. It's almost like a company that is like acting as a PE holding company. And I mean, maybe that's even what it is. I don't fucking know. And it may not even be in a position to actually maintain these things. Like,
I agree with you that the worst possible thing that could happen is what my expectation is, and you bringing up that possible end of life timing
I mean,
could
come
quite
on,
possibly be
man.
the truth. Could quite
Come
possibly.
on.
By the way, shout out to ZDI. Without ZDI, we don't know
Yeah.
any of this stuff. And shout out to companies who are starting to find another. This is like another layer in the disclosure process. Usually, it's from full disclosure all the way to this new coordinated thing. There's like another layer here where if a vendor is going to be tardy and they keep asking for extensions, we're going to out them. We're going to out them with some
Yeah.
bare bones details that doesn't put people at risk, but give people some sort of mitigation. In this case, there are none. It's like, don't use this product, which in itself should be the right mitigation anyway.
Yeah.
But again, shout out to ZDI for this policy, and I wish more people reporting vulnerabilities
When are
would
we
take
gonna
on
get
this policy.
When are we hearing this from HackerOne or BugCrowd, right? Like, you know,
They're
when
not really fun. They're not really brokers at all. They're there to represent the interest of vendors and keep researchers
well,
on the NDA. You know my
then
take on that
I
stuff
know,
already.
and I agree with you, which is why I'm saying ZDI just did this, and I mean, shout out to them. If and what matters about the fact that they did it is that this is a new thing, and
Right.
I would like HackerOne and BugCrowd, two companies that make a giant point out of their community engagement. And we have friends, you know, at least in BugCrowd. HackerOne's
We have
weird,
friends in both of those companies.
but
They
like,
could and should be doing better
the,
at holding vendors
I'm
accountable.
my point is they kind of have to at this point. Because if you want to say that you're not like a racket on behalf of corporations that are paying you money to muscle security research, which in turn, like let's call out the full chain because they have made this look like a market and a service. And they are that's turning this into a business alienates the fact that what security research actually is a good faith endeavor for the well-being of all consumers. It's a form of consumer protection that people engage in either for commercial gain or for reputational gain or just because they fucking feel like it. And you have now created a mechanism of extortion by which a company can silence the only thing that was pressuring them to improve their products by virtue of an NDA and a bit of hush money. And in many of those cases, you're not even paying those people that hush money. You're just making them wait. So
Mm-hmm.
I think HackerOne, BugCrowd, and the other bug bounty companies have a responsibility to actually be this transparent, to have a clause, the way that Google Project Zero has always had a fucking clause that said, this is a mechanistic process other people are going to discover this vulnerability by virtue of it being there. So you have X amount of days. You can ask for an extension if there's a good reason for it, and otherwise you can go fuck yourself because there are stakeholders here that need to know that this is there.
There's some big gaps in the system, though. I'll just caution you. There's some big gaps in the system there, where in many cases, HackerOne isn't even the HackerOne is a payment platform. The very, very big vendors don't even use HackerOne as like a bug bounty payment. They're like the payment platform to help shift money around, but the negotiation is direct between vendor and researcher. In many cases, HackerOne has nothing. No.
They're just like, is this like,
they have no bite.
They're just a payment platform like for ransomware negotiations, as in the case of like Sullivan and Uber, right? Like that kind of a payment platform. Yeah.
In some cases, yes.
Let's talk about it as it is then. I don't have a good view of the bug bounty platforms in the first place, and that could just
I'm not a fan of them. I think they've been a net negative to the industry as a whole since the creation of it.
I think it's surprisingly parasitic for something that is sickly sweet in its discussion of its community building and support.
Of its value. I agree.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts on that, Costin, on Ivanti? Close the book on Ivanti. I want to move on to one last story before we got to go.
Look, I mean, you know, my opinion about these kind of platforms, you need to take all the risks into account. So if you're still using some of these platforms, moreover, if by some accident you actually get ransomed thanks to one of these 0 days in one of these products, maybe it's time to evaluate other solutions. Like you need to do your own due diligence, understand what is available, what is perhaps the best option for you. So yeah, I'm not recommending any particular solution myself. But I mean, looking at some of these incidents, water is wet. Like it feels that almost every week there's another 0 day in one of these products. Just, try to build the foundation, the security foundation of your company on things that are solid, on things that don't have millions of 0 days, that don't take forever to fix them, that you can trust and you can leverage for a long period of time, that work on open source hardware, on hardware that you can actually upgrade over the years without being stuck to one place or another. And you will see that long term, that investment will pay off. And you will overall, I think you will overall be better if you pay more attention to these choices.
Great sage advice from the master, of course. And I'll shift to you, Costin, to touch this story quickly because this is in your wheelhouse. Chat control in the European Union is off the table again. You were complaining the last time we mentioned chat control on this podcast. You said, oh my God, we're heading into dark times. Now it feels like some companies, Denmark, I believe, that was originally backing this legislation, scrapped their vote, which threw it out. Provide a synopsis for the audience on what's happening.
Oh yeah, so this proposal, which is coming back. This is the fifth time that they are somehow trying to push this crazy proposal that would essentially force the scanning of everyone's encrypted messages for offensive material, with offensive material to be defined and determined at probably later times. At the moment, they're pretending that that's CSAM, so child pornography, but we know very well from past experiences that once you start breaking encryption and you start looking at people's personal communications, you are opening a Pandora's box. Like I used to live in communist times back in the days when Securitatea would simply open everybody's letters, read them, and summarize. In some cases, the letters would no longer be delivered. In other cases, the letters would just go to your Securitatea file. We are just fucking going back to those times with all these repeated proposals, and people just don't seem to understand. What do you have there, Juan?
Hold it to the camera.
Red Horizons. Pachepa.
My copy of
nice.
Red Horizons falling apart. What an amazing.
We gotta put it. Should we put it into the Three Body Problem Book Club?
Oh, absolutely. Shout out to the Securitate.
So,
Amazing.
Costin, it's off now
So,
completely. Where do you
look,
think it
it's
is?
not. It's the fifth time. So here's what happens. Denmark, which holds the presidency of the European Union, they were pushing this again, hoping to get it approved. And the big issue was that Germany, who previously opposed this rule, they were like kind of signaling that they are ready to accept it. And then, people starting making noise. There's actually a guy called Joachim who put up a website, stopchatcontrol.eu, which was, in my opinion, the winning move in this whole game. People could just go to this website, you select your country, and then you click a button and it crafts an email that you can send. And apparently, this massive amount of spam from people managed to
It's
turn
not
the
spam.
vote
Is
around.
it spam?
This amount,
If
let's
I
say
send
this
you an email,
massive
is it spam?
reaction
Yeah.
from constituents, reaction from normal people like me. So I did send one round of emails to the Romanian representatives in the European Parliament. I got 0 replies, obviously. So I sent another one last week. And I was surprised. I got 1 reply. I got just 1 reply. So one representative, actually, they replied back to me. I think it was an auto reply, but nevertheless,
You got something.
I got something back. And, it said the following, that he never supported this proposal. It's a flagrant violation of human rights and blah, blah, blah. And thank you for being active on this topic. And I was thinking to myself, look, this guy who answered, he's one of like 50 who answer. And I think that politicians, they still don't understand the reality of nowadays. They think, like you're campaigning, you get the votes, then you go into parliament and you do what the fuck you want for the next 5 years or whatever. This can't happen anymore. Like if you just go there and you ignore what you were saying, like what you promised, and you ignore what I want from you guys, then you will not be reelected. You won't be there the next time. Like this guy in particular, he was a candidate for presidency in the Romanian elections. So the fact that he replies and he cares, like it's an incentive for me to vote him the next time. And I think that the politicians, they don't understand this rapid cycle of modern technologies when you send emails, when you use online platforms, social media to poll your constituents, to listen to what they want. And then when something like this comes up to reinstate the old Securitatea rules, then you do in like how it is best for your constituents, not how people order you to vote or how you think that you should be voting.
Juanito, listen to this European and his democracy.
Hey,
You're laughing,
I think that,
right?
No. I'll say this. I think the most valuable thing to come out of this situation, the umpteenth fucking time, is that true activism. Like I'm a huge fan of ContraPoints. I like, it's my YouTube video essayist crush, and something she said recently is that misery is not activism. And that line has stuck with me because we all know people who seem to be under the impression that being miserable and sounding miserable and raining on every fucking parade and having some shitty thing to say is a way of being engaged in political activism at a time when folks feel dispossessed and they feel alienated and they feel upset about a variety of things, about Gaza, about the right-wing presidency, about AI, about whatever. And the truth is that I think that's a way of pacifying ourselves, that we are somehow externalizing the bad things that are happening around us. We're disavowing them by virtue of speaking, of telling everyone who will listen that this is something that we do not approve of. But that is not equivalent to doing something about it. And it isn't actually being better than any other neighbor and any other person who's just trying to fucking survive and feed their family and just make it to the next day. A lot of people are not thrilled about the situation that we're in. I think it's awesome that we're seeing that there are ways within our wheelhouse as technologists to actually enable better outcomes. This dude set up a fucking website that made it frictionless to advocate for yourself at a time when everybody is busy and dispossessed and terrified about their future livelihood and completely burned by fucking housing costs and living in a life at a lifetime of such disproportional diffusion of resources that we are the richest humanity has ever been and the poorest that the developed nations peoples have ever been. And they don't have the fucking time to try to figure out how to send out a fucking email to the same fucking people who are not going to answer because they don't give a flying fuck what you have to say unless it's overwhelming. And express that they're uncomfortable with the fifth iteration of the same futile effort, which means these people know that you don't want it, and they're just pushing and pushing, hoping that they can get one through. This is my way of bringing this back to the technologists who have all the ones that have become defeatist and will not stop whining, which is why I need to have policies in our private group chats that politics cannot be discussed in this way, and that you need to go to. I literally have had to create off-channel, side channels to be like, look, guys, you're all welcome to talk about this, but just do it over there. Everybody here is actually just trying to make it to the next day. And they don't need to virtue signal every day or express their anxiety every day about disavowing the externalities that we're dealing with. But what this dude is showing us is that we have things we could be doing. And if you care this much, if you have this much time to whine and bitch and moan about how terrible our environment is, clearly there are creative ways that you could be enabling people to make a difference. And I invite you to take that energy and redirect it towards things that will make a difference, like this website. That's fucking great.
Every time I hear about chat control and your fifth, sixth time going over it, I think about our own encryption debate here, backdooring encryption debate here that just always pops up at some point, and then you have to remind folks, and it feels like a cycle going. So I feel you on that, Costin. Last thing before we go, guys, I wanted to touch on this quickly because it was a topic that we've discussed in detail in the past. Is VirusTotal announcing simpler access for a stronger VirusTotal? We got a blog post out of our friend Bernardo Quintero that provides news on some key access tiers, like new pricing structure, basically addressing some of the. Juanito, you're already squinting. Addressing some of the how to describe this? VirusTotal losing its way in the community. No, you've described it in the past as, all the community components that made VirusTotal so fun and interesting is kind of gone away. These big, giant $1 million bills that, shout out to our buddy Vicente doing his thing at VirusTotal. What do you make of the new announcement? There's a VT community component here for free. There's a contributor component here for free. There's VT Lite from 5K for some low bar. What do you make of it? Is this an attempt to address what you've been complaining about?
I didn't see this as an attempt to address any of it, not even remotely address it. Because all this is an announcement of the way things are. This is the way things have been forever.
So there's nothing new in this?
Nothing new in it at all. I mean, and it's not even giving any clarification. I read it twice, just being am I missing? What the fuck am I missing?
Wait. We are introducing a contributor tier, a dedicated model for our engine partners. Is that new?
No, that's the same shit we were a part of at Kaspersky 10 fucking years ago. That's the contributor. You're feeding us samples, so we're going to make it cheaper for you. That is, or we're going to give you a free access to misdetection. That is that's the fucking same thing that we've been a part of for 10 years. They didn't introduce shit. No, they're just officializing the way things are. Everyone's complaining that the prices have gone up, that the free tier, the lower tiers don't make any sense, that it's completely unaffordable for people who just want to do threat intel, that all this shit. And what they just released is a blog that says, yes, you're right. And this is the thing.
We're gonna
put it on a fucking table.
What? No, I was thinking here. Look, we know that. So the thing which attracted my attention in this plan, and by the way, I recommend everyone to take a look at this blog from Bernardo. Um, in particular, there's this tire which is called VT Duet, which in theory, well, is it like the largest? Is it the biggest tier
It is.
in the list? In theory, unless it says actually key access
Can you
tiers,
put it
meaning
up?
there are other tiers in addition to these four that we're talking about here. And with VT Duet, you get full feature set, high API quota, and community intelligence only. So I think that a lot of discussions around the VT pricing model were about the fact that if you wanted what you used to have, then you're automatically being fed this Mandiant / Google threat intelligence on top of VirusTotal, while the main complaint from people was that we don't want
I don't
that.
want all of that
We
shit.
want
Yeah.
only VirusTotal. We don't. And people like salespeople were saying, well, unfortunately, that's not available anymore. So, like, take it or leave it. If you want it, you will be getting this
Other
new
thing,
threat
the upsell.
intelligence
Yeah.
with your subscription, and it will cost you only $1 million per year or something like that. So, if this VT Duet is what VT used to be with a high API quota, and you only get community intelligence, I highly commend this move, which I think is pretty nice, and people will be happy with it. Now, the annual price for that, it says based on the number of affiliates covered and contribution level. In other ways, it's negotiable, I guess. But it does leave some kind of a hope, like for smaller companies, that for like 5K per year, they can still get some low API, advanced search, Yara hunting, even file downloading, private scanning. So to me, at least some parts of this announcement, they sound very good. But I'm like, on the positive, like optimistic side of things.
That 5K part, I think there's a fundamental flaw in it, and if VT fixed it, it would become amazing, and it would become a like it would make VirusTotal of a quality and usefulness that I could only dream of, which is VirusTotal's queries are not complete in their results. And that means that I cannot know that if I spend one API call on a query, that I know everything I need to know about that, like that the response is complete, right? Like I've complained about this a lot with retro hunting. I think retro hunting is it's the prime example of a business model destroying the utility of a new capability, because they charge a fair amount for retro hunting, and that's okay. I think that that's a computationally expensive process, and it yields a lot of good value, so you should charge for it and you should make some money on it. However, the fact that you get the results of like the past 90 days or the past year and not the full corpus means that there's not just a diminishing utility to running a retro hunt, but an incompleteness that makes it not that useful. And not, I can't just run a rule and say, I know everything there is to know about this as far as VT is concerned. And if they don't have something, I should go look for other data sets. Similarly, with the API queries, with the VTI queries, like having that limitation on it not being a complete picture of what is in VT means that 5,000 API queries isn't shit. Without like being able to run a query every 10 minutes just to try to have completeness of what comes through the API, because I can't afford the file feed, which is like way more expensive, I actually cannot use this for threat intel purposes unless you start giving me complete answers. And so my plea to VirusTotal is, you have just reinvented yourself as GTI. You are providing exquisite threat intelligence now to the people who can afford it. And I have access to it, and I love it. I think it's great. But if you want to be supporting the security community, if you want to enable threat intelligence as something that happens in places that aren't multi-billion-dollar companies, then the way to do it is to provide complete answers now. And then you can charge 5K, 10K, 15K, 20K, 50K, I don't give a shit. But then the model, the product model and the pricing model can be aligned, and people can get true value from it, instead of the rule beating mechanisms that we're all developing, where every company that wants to do threat intel has to invest at least this much money, and then build a system on our side that's querying all the time and checking all the time and trying to complete the picture and trying to build our own submitter databases and our own blah blah blah. It's like, guys, just let's get honest with what the actual value proposition of your product is, and then charge people what it's worth. And we can, and that way, when you give it away for free, or when you give people a $5,000 tier, it means that they have a fighting chance of competing with the other people that are spending $1 bajillion, and you still have a healthy ecosystem. But right now, that's not something VT is enabling.
And there's no attempt to create an alternative or a competitor.
There
What
are
does that say?
attempts. There are attempts, but I think it says a lot about the market. I think it says a lot about.
Is it too late?
No, not at all. Not. This is a necessity that will continue to be a necessity. It needs some rejiggering. But like, look, I'll put my money where I'll put my own sort of reputation on the line, and I am very quick to scrutinize companies. And to scrutinize the efforts of other people. And that's not a nice thing to do all the time. If anything, look, I'm talking about VirusTotal, and I say this with some apprehension because I love VirusTotal as a product. They're a partner of ours in my threat intel business
We're all friends. We're just having an honest conversation. Yeah.
I admire folks like Bernardo and Emmy who started this, and like so much of my career and my career wins have come because of VT. Like I am in many ways indebted to VirusTotal and to these folks for like many of the wins I've had in my career over the past 10, 15 years. So I speak with apprehension as I kind of like criticize them. So let me criticize myself as well. I started a company that I co-founded a company called Stairwell that sought to fix a lot of these issues and to create an engine that was this sort of complete answer engine, right? Like you ran a YAR, like you put all your files in the thing. It's all got ACLs and privately segmented, so you're not worried about who gets access to your stuff. But you have all your files somewhere, and every time you run a YAR rule, you would know your results would be of every fucking file that we know about in your environment and in wherever else, right? And to be honest, that technology was meant to be, we used to call it foundation. It was the stepping stone. It was the very bottom of what the company was going to build on, because the idea was you have this inventory problem, which I categorize it as one of the fundamental security problems, period. The inventory problem. What exactly do we own and control? How many assets do we have? How is it configured? How many files have we ever seen? At what times, when, and where? How many IPs and domains do we contact? Which ones, where, how often, and how? Right? Like, without being able to answer those questions, you're to the degree that you cannot answer that question, you have an indefensible environment. It's an inverse correlation between answering that question and being able to defend it. So why am I bringing all this shit up? It's not an advertisement for Stairwell. I think what I'm
It's
saying
the
is
first
like,
time I've heard Stairwell properly described about what they actually do.
yeah. Well, I think that's part of the problem, right? Like I'm not with Stairwell, and I went off to S1, and I've been at Sentinel-1 almost 5 years now, and I'm really grateful and happy with what I've been able to build at Sentinel-1. So I'm in no way here like pitching for Stairwell. I actually like that meme of like the cartoon guy like poking at a thing with a stick going do something. Like that's been me staring at Stairwell for like the past 2 years going, here's your fucking chance, right? But you know, Google just pushed VirusTotal to do a PE move to like basically do price discovery higher and higher and higher to find who your whales are and how much you can force them to pay, and then like everybody else can get fucked. Like that's a PE move, and that's usually not what you would expect from a multi-trillion-dollar business.
That's what the Stanford MBAs do at Google, though, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, some fucking McKinsey or like Boston Consulting Group, genius decided that this was the way to go about it, and is effectively destroying the threat intel industry and ecosystem in the process. So what I'm saying is like, I have attempted to put something together to do something like this before. And it's not easy at all, right? Like there's dynamics that there's the technology, which I think you can build some pretty amazing stuff now a lot easier than when we tried to do it. Just on cloud offerings and data bricks and stuff like that. It's not as hard as it was when we tried to do it. Then there's like the problem with stoking a community and sourcing files that are net new and unique. Like that's something that I think VT has gotten pretty weak on for quite some time because of, well, how other companies abuse that model. And then I would say that part of the difficulty here is basically competing with VT. Like I think that the biggest thing that keeps some of the potential competitors in line is this kind of like fear and apprehension, the same fear and apprehension I feel when I talk about VT, because like I love it and I never wanted a replacement. I wanted VT to just be the thing everyone contributed files to and like the one thing that enabled all of us, and hey, it's our friends.
Monopoly is
all
never
in.
good.
Yeah, I agree with that, but like, so that's why I want Pasquale to succeed with Rational Edge. Right, like that's a VT like front end that's doing VT like things, but new, cooler processing things, and it will let you, and it's designed to hunt, and it's information dense, and it's not meant to be a CISO panel slapped on a technical platform, right? Like it. So, I'm all for it. At the same time, I look at Pasquale's thing, and he's a small shop trying to do a very big job. That also includes the complexities of, for example, if you want to be really successful, how many files are you going to fucking store, man? Are you talking about, 6 petabytes, 8 petabytes, 10 petabytes? First of all, can you get them? Can you get good ones? And second of all, can you store them and process them, right? So Pasquale is building the front end that Stairwell should have built. Stairwell has the back end that Pasquale should hope to have.
So somebody's going to acquire somebody.
Stairwell's got the product scope that VT should have had. And VT has the infrastructure, the files, and everything to do everything everybody else is doing, and they just don't. They just fucking choose not to, right? It's a fucking bizarre space, man.
And that's the round answer to why we haven't seen like competitors pop up all over the place. It's just a deep, complex thing. All right, guys, we're 2 hours and 15 minutes in. Costin, can we please close the show with some shout outs? You got anything this week?
Well, of course, shout outs to our good friend Mark, who was at the Bucharest Cybersecurity Summit. I wish there were more conferences to meet up with old friends, people who've been in the industry, and they have so many amazing stories. And I wish there were more presentations about old stories, paleontology, and kind of things which may otherwise get forgotten, if you want. I think Juan knows what I'm talking about, and hopefully there will be some interesting presentations. I heard that actually fantastic presentation. Proposal was rejected by state of statecraft, which makes no sense in my opinion. I wish they would somehow reconsider, or perhaps they didn't know what that story was about.
Ooh,
But
do
I
we know
was,
which one it is?
of course, we know, but we're
Well,
not
We're
gonna
we're
blow
familiar
it.
with what the talk is, right?
I think we're familiar. It's
Nice.
something we've been
Costin,
waiting for a long time. Yes,
Costin,
sir.
you should be glad that that didn't happen because they're not recording the talks and you and I can't be there.
Oh, we can't be
So,
there. I got it. Okay,
All right,
next
you guys
time.
are not going to be at Matonis's State of Statecraft because of Binding Hook, which is
Correct.
I mean,
there.
we would have to essentially like haul ass out of Binding Hook and like get on a 2 hour train to try to make the conference like the next morning. And I don't know that that's really the last time I tried to rush Costin onto a train, we both fell. Like we
Oh
like
God. Oh
dude, we
no.
almost we had presented Equation and Sophacy to Apple at Apple headquarters back in the day.
I had to
And
make it
like
to San Francisco, right?
yeah, and like we had to make it to San Francisco. Like the train was about to leave. Costin had bought an iPad like for his wife. Like we had all this. I bought like these like Japanese ceramics that they sold at
Oh,
the thing,
beautiful.
and we're grabbing all this shit. And I just see the train starting to go, and I'm like, Costin, we can make it. We fucking rush. We both fall on the steps. All of our shit is like broken. It was a fucking mess. So I know better than to try to rush Costin onto a train. It was an undignified way to go. So we'll
Shout out
stick
to
with
Max
Binding Hook.
Smith. Shout out to Max Smith and all the speakers at Binding Hook live. I saw the agenda was posted. Looks solid as usual.
Dude, the venue looks amazing.
With
State of
a
Statecraft
rotating
also happens.
stage or something
Yeah,
like
it's
this, like a
like you're in
circular.
this. You're in the center of the circle, like this. Like it's cool. It's gonna be cool. Sorry,
Conferences
Ryan.
are not easy to run. They're a pain in the ass. So my shout out to all the organizers grinding through getting those, and hopefully you have a very, very smooth conference. Anything from you, Juanito?
Well, I mean, I cut you off before giving a shout out to State of Statecraft, which is also our friends. Our buddy Matonis putting this together. It actually looks amazing. I'm glad some of the labs guys will be there. I won't be able to make it, but I will be there in spirit, and actually quite jealous of missing some of the talks. So
No recordings, no publication, no journalists, no nothing. So that's one of those dark conferences. I think there's a little, Dave Itel raised this on his Daily Dave newsletter this week. He did some light coverage of Offensive AI Con. And one of the things he said was, a lot of these invite-only conferences put the right set of people in the right place to talk comfortably and confidently about things in a trusted environment, blah, blah, blah. But on the flip side of that, we're all talking to the same set of fucking people over and over and over again, right? If we're just inviting our friends and our friends, right, we're not really expanding it, and we're leaving a lot of folks out. A lot of folks who are early in their career that don't have their networks and so on. So there's a little bit of a balance that needs to happen here. I'm not a big fan of these dark conferences. I feel like if you want to do a dark conference, don't even fucking publicize it. Just go in your corner and do your conference.
Well, let's be honest about why this is happening. Let's put the fucking onus where the onus belongs, right? Most of these conferences are becoming like even ours, which is not like LabsCon is supposed to be recorded and we push out the videos. We actually just pushed out our first video this week, which is Martin Wendiginson's talk with Brad, like the folks from Dreadnought. It's a great talk, so go watch that. But we put half of the talks on the keynote day were off the record, and it's not because like some of them had legitimate like law enforcement ongoing blah blah, but a lot of them was just like, oh, I don't want to get in trouble with this vendor, or like my employer is going to give me a hard fucking time. So really, what you're describing, Ryan, is true.
Conferences are going away. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
real conferences are going away.
They're becoming kind of like, industry workshops for insiders, which I'm happy to have. And I'm supporting, and I'm helping to build, and I'm glad our friends are doing it. But the format is a response to the industry and the way that vendors are treating their employees, not really to the sensitivity of the material per se.
I agree.
And for anybody who claims that we need to scale up the industry and, we need so many more people to be able to join and blah, blah, I don't see any legitimate mechanisms by which that's being fomented. If anything, we are making it incredibly hard to get into this space. And we're doing so at a time when there's another very, 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 very hot area. So if you're going to go learn and cut your teeth and try to get into a space and you look at it and it's like, it's going to be hard. Security's here, hard as fuck, hard to get into, not that hot as far as like the hiring goes. AI's over here. Whatever the fuck happens, if I spend any time learning AI, I'm going to make a shit ton of money. Anybody who's trying to get into a new industry is going to end up over there.
Enough of these invite-only conferences talking to ourselves. Like we need to talk to the industry as a
I
whole.
know the perfect event, Countermeasure Conference, which is
yes.
just coming up. It's
see.
less
you
than
give
a
the pitch
month
quickly?
away. Well, less than a month away. Countermeasure in Ottawa. All three of us will be there. Hopefully, everybody's
Yeah.
got tickets.
Everybody's
booked
got
and
tickets and all booked.
visas, all booked.
Everything. We're there.
Oh, we're
It's
looking out for our
happening.
Canadian friends as well. Costin and Vitali, you guys are doing some training, some paid training there ahead of time.
I'm afraid so. Vitali's training, I think it got canceled, but I still have a few seats available for my iOS forensics and malware hunting training. So if you're worried about all these Apple warnings and meta warnings and you don't know how to start an Apple forensics program to protect your CEO, or at least to try to determine when they get hit, do look into the trainings that I will be providing at Countermeasure. A bit of shameless self-promotion.
Self-promotion.
And that's the weekend of November 7th, I believe. Juanito, you and I are going to sneak in and get some free training there. At least
Come.
get the...
I know. I think we might be a little too late to really
Like,
get anything out of it. And like I said, right? Like Costin's gonna teach the like dedicated smart man's way to doing it, and then you and I are gonna be in the back like, well, maybe if we just pay for this one service and we try this other thing, we can have like the cheap man's version. Let's see.
Possible.
All right, let me close the show with one last shout out to Tavis Ormandy, who announced last night that he's leaving Google Project Zero after 20 years there.
Wow.
Very much an early influencer of how disclosure happened and had a really, really unique approach to things. Over the years, targeted AV vendors a lot specifically and forced us to, I don't know, take things a lot more seriously.
How is he in your book?
In my book, I have a conflicting relationship with Tavis. Back in the day when he used to drop Microsoft 0 Days, I was a blogger at ZDNet writing about cybersecurity issues. Okay. And I was somewhat critical of him, saying he is the arbiter of what the threat landscape looked like. So he decided, you know what? I think someone else will find this. So fuck it. I'm just going to drop O'Day here. Turns out he was right. His approach and over the years I've come to respect his work, and I got a little story I want to tell here. On September 4th, 2015, if you go check, you'll find that was a Friday evening at 7:45 in the evening. Tavis dropped a tweet CCing me saying, okay, the first Kaspersky exploit is finished. It works great on 15 and 16. I'll mail the report after dinner. CC Ryan Naraine with a screenshot of him popping calc, right? This is Friday night, 7:45 p.m. About a few minutes later, he says, oh, by the way, it's remote zero interaction, system exploit, and default config, so about as bad as it gets. And he tags me again. So this is a Friday night. I'm scrambling to call Costin. It is 3 a.m. there. We're trying to figure out if this is worth it. Turns out we worked over the weekend on this, and I'll give the point of this story is the Russians who were responsible for this on the product side at Kaspersky wanted to get on the phone with Tavis because the back and forth over email and the time zones and they wanted to treat it with a sense of urgency, and they wanted to get on the phone with Tavis to kind of just like walk through the exploit and what he found. Tavis said to me, Ryan, I don't get on the phone with anyone. This is a disaster waiting to happen. We're going to stick to email. And it took a lot of back and forth with me basically saying to Tavis, please trust me on this. These guys want to work on it. They want to work on it. He actually got on the phone with the Russians. He broke his policy, got on the phone with the Russians, and actually included me in all the back and forth going all the way through to when all the patches were issued. So on this day when we're doing shout-outs, I want to shout out Tavis for being a net positive in general and being okay in my book. And I wish him all the best with whatever he does. Is he okay in your book, Costin?
Absolutely. I mean, I remember we fixed that vulnerability in like record time. He actually, I think he wrote, he said, nobody ever fixed a vulnerability as fast as the guys from Kaspersky did, right?
That is correct. I believe I got 10% bonus for that. So thank you.
It's always either plus 10% or minus 10%. This time it was plus.
It evens out.
Absolutely. Godspeed to Tavis. And with that, we'll catch you guys next week. Thanks, everyone.
Ciao.
Thanks, guys.